the image in front of me, things are kind of going back to normal here in New York. I don't know if it's necessarily for the better or for the worse, but I said this a long time ago. I've said it time again. But once we see traffic hitting, kind of things are going back to what they normally are. Hey everyone, Nick Sakalis here, and I figured I'd do a live stream while I'm stuck into traffic. I guess we're not completely in the logjam that we typically are in the past, but at the same time, it's not fun. I'll tell you something, this is getting frustrating. The traffic has gone sick. It just so happens that it's my birthday today, and this is the gift I get for my birthday: a nice traffic jam. Just want to get back. Heading back from Astoria right now. Went and checked out a full family, one single family home that's going up for rent, and I'm actually, still in shock as far as where the rates have gone and how relatively affordable a lot of the larger rental units have gone. And it's not only the one families, it's anything that's in a apartment that's 3 bedrooms and above have definitely gotten an adjustment as far as the price, and they have kind of leveled off. And I'm going to be cautiously saying this, but it looks like in some sectors, in some areas, people are actually getting value for the rents. If I was a tenant, I'd be running in and just jumping on these larger units and getting them at the reasonable rents that they're coming at right now, because this is not going to last. There's no way. The place that I went and just took a look at is $37.50 for a full house rental. It came with a basement. It came with a backyard, front yard, parking, and something like that in the heart of Astoria. Now you are, and the smart tenants are actually jumping onto these properties and really taking advantage of them. It's a phenomenon, but I guarantee you this phenomenon is not going to last. It definitely won't last. It's definitely going to be a situation where you are going to be seeing, once the spring season started and the real demand for rentals start kicking in, these deals are going to dissipate. From a landlord perspective, you're cringing to see these places go at these price points, but at the same time, from a landlord perspective, you also want to get your places occupied as soon as possible. So you can't hold out for these numbers that we were achieving years ago. And this is not my unit that I'm renting out. That I'm actually doing for. I went and checked it out for a friend of mine. I'm not even going to be listing it, but I'm going to help promote them to get it rented out as soon as possible for them, because you don't want to see people with vacancies. At the same time, I guarantee you, whoever ends up getting one of these, this place in particular, it's like almost hitting the lottery, especially if they lock it in for a 2-year lease and with no increases. They're going to probably do really, really well. Just the basement for the storage and the parking alone. Honestly, the parking situation is horrendous in Astoria. So anytime you're able to get a full house rental with more than enough parking space, you better grab it, because you're getting a great opportunity. It's as good as gold. it's one of those things. But, I figured, let me show everybody what I'm dealing with right now. I haven't really moved much right now. This is, typically what we were accustomed to pre-COVID. And it feels like we're just about there again. I long for the days right now where I could zoom in and out between the city and Long Island with relative ease, with no any type of obstruction. This is not happening anymore. And it's funny why it's happening. I don't think people realize what the situation is. A lot of people are still not taking the LIRR. And because of that reason, more and more people are hitting the roads with their cars. And don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily putting people down for not taking the LIRR, because they're afraid to be confined in a train. Considering that the alert that we have right now for COVID and for the pandemic hasn't went down. We're still in high alert. Now, because we're still in high alert, a lot of people, let me see what to say. Hi, I'm from Turkey. Well, somebody just wrote that they're from Turkey. So, hello, person in Turkey. I'm from New York. That being said, the alert for mass transportation hasn't really dissipated. People are still very cautious about getting into confined spaces in mass populated areas. And again, like I said before, I'm not blaming them for feeling that way. You can't blame people for feeling that way. It's one of those situations where, people are nervous. There's a lot of fear up in the air. There's a lot of fear mongering going as well. So what's happening is more and more people are jumping in their cars to make that commute. And for a while, it was okay, because a lot of people were still working remotely, and they continue to work remotely at this moment. But that's changing more and more. And more people are feeling more comfortable as far as going back to work and not working from their homes. And some of the businesses are requiring for people to go back to their homes, back to their offices to work from. Now, I never had that luxury to be able to work solely from home, because my kind of job means I have to be on the road for a good amount of time. But a lot of people were able to not only get their job done, to be very efficient working from a virtual type of scenario. What do you think about favorite president? Well, I'm going to try to respond to everything that's being commented right now. I'm having a hard time because I have to be hands-free, because I'm doing this live stream as I'm going, and we can't touch any electronic device or any kind of mobile device as we're doing it, because we don't want to violate the law and that kind of thing. And I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want to get a ticket, and I don't want to lose my license. So I'm not playing around with the phone. I'm not touching any mobile device. I'm driving. Oh, wow, we just caught an opening. That's actually really interesting. The fact that I was able to get a patch of non-traffic, but I see the lights in front of me. But whoever made that comment about something about the president, please make that comment again. I'll try to read it as fast as it goes in there, and I will answer it. And I will try to answer any other questions I see pop up as well. I'm not going to be able to type back, but I'll answer them through the video. Now, as you can see, this is one of the funnels we always run across where traffic starts getting too congested, where you jump off of the Grand Central to get onto the LIE. Always gets a little bit congested right in this spot. Let's see once we get past this curve if we'll actually be able to have a free road or get into more bumper to bumper. And I figured I'd want to do this real time just to give everybody a little bit of view of what's going on the roads right now. I know there's a lot of people that are not really driving much anymore or have avoided getting onto the roads and going back and forth to the city, so I figured I'd just give everybody a little bit of understanding. Hello, Rob. There you go. Now you see the security lights. That's something that makes me cringe every time I get into back to back, and I see those red lights pop up. The hair stands up in the back of my neck and my arms because I don't know what's expecting me after that curve. Let's see what's coming along. As you can see, there's still a lot of work going on in the area. A lot of road work. You know, you saw when we were passing through that LaGuardia section that, you know, there's been massive changes over the past year, 2 years by LaGuardia, and they're expanding the infrastructure everywhere they can right now. Let's see what are we expecting to see after the curve. Good to hear from you. How do you feel about the market in Astoria? Okay, Rob. So you just so happened to ask me a question that I'm very knowledgeable of. So what do I think of Astoria? That's a double-ended question because there's multiple facets to what Astoria market is. Are we talking about residential? Are we talking about commercial? Are we talking about rental? There's a lot of different sectors. Office space, retail. Let me try to hit them all in a very thoughtful way. And look at this. I'm not even going to jump onto the highway. They're going to take the service road as long as I can. Bumper to bumper on LIE. That's what you get from going on the LIE. So what's happening in Astoria right now? You have condos. Okay, so as far as condos are concerned, the market softened a little bit in Astoria as far as the condos are concerned, and you did get a little bit of a slowdown as far as new development happening and more inventory being put out there. But I don't see a dramatic shift right now in Astoria. Yeah, the places are not selling as quickly as they were in the past, and that's something that has given a lot of people fear. But that doesn't mean the market is dying in Astoria. What's happening is we're seeing almost like a swap, because the escape from New York mentality is still happening. People are still moving out of the city. Well, when I say the city, I mean specifically Manhattan. But they're going to the boroughs. They're going to Westchester upstate. They're going to Long Island. So what's happening in the, filtering towns in the boroughs like Astoria, Long Island City, Williamsburg, these kind of places, is you're seeing almost like a exchange. You're seeing people leave, but they're coming in at almost the same rate. So it's almost like a wash kind of situation. But it's not happening in a rapid level enough to really give people a sense that the market's crashing or anything like that. Anybody that's really telling you that is not necessarily in line with what truly is happening. The media loves to give you all kinds of different impressions and all kinds of different things like that. But the truth be said, it's almost like a swap. So places are not selling as fast as they used to, but at the same time, they're still going. And if they're being put at a reasonable rate, they're selling relatively quickly. What happened in Astoria is the rates inflated so quickly, and you had a lot of people that were basically naming their price. So I'll give you a perfect scenario. You had a unit, because we're talking about condos right now. Let's say you had a unit that was selling for $700,000, conservatively. I don't know. Let's say it was a two-bedroom unit, new unit that was selling for 700. That's being very conservative. It was selling at that rate, and because it got and achieved that number, the next unit that went up went for 7.25 or 710, and there was almost like a chain reaction where for every unit that broke a new high and a new number, you would have the next ones going on the market at a higher rate. And that obviously makes sense if there's a high demand and a scarce amount of units out there. What was happening is you had more and more units hit the market, new construction happening, additional units hitting the inventory, and at the same time, the demand was still there, but the supply was really building up to a level where it was outpacing the sales. Now, a lot of things have halted recently. A lot of work has halted. A lot of the new inventory hasn't flooded the market. So that kind of gave an equilibrium and kind of making the rates for these units to be a little more stabilized. And because of that reason, you're going to see a uptick in demand that's going to hit over the next year or so, because the next year or so, I don't foresee any substantial increases in interest rates, and I also don't see any real big movements to halt the market. Astoria is still going to be one of these areas that are going to be in high demand. You're literally 10 minutes out of the city with the train, 10 minutes out of the city with the car. It's a growing city, thriving town, and you're not going to have that issue. Where I see an issue happening right now in Astoria is the commercial market, and I see a real slowdown in the rates of occupancy of all these vacant units, and that's going to continue. And one of the biggest reasons is the same reason of why you saw a lot of slowdown in the increasing of rates of condos and homes was because basically everybody was naming their prices. That's I lost track of my thought right now. That's what I wanted to actually finalize on the condos. Because of, and even single families and other type of residences, even two families, that kind of thing, because of the fact that everything was going up and skyrocketing, you have a situation where you have a lot of people that were just naming the price just because they personally thought it was worth it, or because people got ambitious. If you're seeing everything selling one after the other, and you're getting new rates every time, so that $700,000 unit that was selling a year ago is non-existent, and you got one of the only places in town, you're basically going to put your place up for 800, even 900, and these are the kind of numbers that people were dealing with. Now, what ended up happening was the asking on a lot of these units got so exuberant that it held everybody back. You could only push on a price up to a certain point where you find somebody's breaking point. And we got to a point in Astoria where it did get to a lot of buyers' breaking points where it just didn't make any sense anymore. Now that everything kind of leveled off, I have a feeling that it's going to pick up again. I think there's going to be a significant pickup. Believe it or not, I think I'm telling everybody something very different from what you normally hear, but you're going to see a significant pickup. And this is not coming from somebody that has a personal bias or a personal investment as far as selling units in Astoria, because I don't have any currently in my inventory, and I don't do that much business as I used to in Astoria, such as selling individual condo units. Commercial market, Rob. Okay, let me just finalize my thought. So that being said, I'm not talking from a bias. I'm just talking from an observation point and from a professional standpoint. Now, going back to the commercial units and giving everybody a better understanding of what is really happening, we have a lot of vacancy right now in Astoria, and there's going to be a lot more vacancy. It's not only Astoria, this is throughout the entire city, throughout the 5 boroughs, where you have numerous places empty, non-occupied, not being used, landlords trying to get them filled out. They haven't reduced the rates yet. And I feel that once that happens, there's going to be a shift where people are going to start like feeling more comfortable getting back into these type of businesses. But that hasn't occurred yet. But even when that does occur, what you're going to have is a scenario where you have all these vacant units. There's going to be a tug of war. There's going to be a battle as far as who's going to fill out their units first. And then you have landlords undercutting themselves in order to fill them out. And this is just going to happen. You know, mark my words. It gets ruthless as far as trying to get a decent tenant in your place. And, people are bending over backwards to get them occupied and reduce that vacancy rate. And they're doing build outs for people. They're giving incentives. They're giving free months. They're doing everything they can to fill it out. But the point is, we have X amount of vacancy right now at this moment. And beyond having this vacancy, we are having a situation where you're going to get, if not an equal amount of vacancy, double, maybe triple the amount of vacancy that's going to exist in these territories. Because once the eviction moratorium lifts, and a lot of landlords start to evict some of these tenants that have been protected, you're going to get a lot more vacancy. And a lot of these places that are staying basically open by like a shoestring kind of situation, and basically manipulating the situation and basically staying there and working and making whatever they can up until they have to get evicted, they're going to just close up shop and leave. They're not going to pay back all those back rents. The businesses that are thriving, the ones that are successful, the ones that actually have a real model of business that they want to sustain, they're going to make good with their landlords and they're going to stay in the units. But there's a lot of places that don't have that ability to do that. And that's going to be a very big problem going forward. Commercial market's going to have a problem. It's going to have a problem for, I want to say, the next 5 years minimum. But it's going to come back. Don't get me wrong. The market is definitely cyclical. Single family occupancy in Astoria, 2-family occupancy in Astoria, I think the market will stay strong because there's a scarcity of these type of things and people want them. Multifamilies have been battered of late, and they are having a lot of issues, especially the stabilized buildings. And under the eviction moratorium that we have in place, which gave the ability to a lot of tenants to not pay their rents has crippled a lot of the landlords, especially in an area like Astoria, where you do have a majority of housing that's owned by small landlords. There's a lot of 2-family, 3-family houses, 6-family houses that are owned by one landlord. It's not a big group. It's not a management company. It's not a major corporation that's owning all these things. You have a lot of people that are basically in a situation of, being against a rock and a hard wall. It's a very, very tough, extremely tough. Let me see. Let me flip it over so people could see the kind of traffic we're dealing with right now. So I'm at a light right now, but right by Utopia Parkway, for anybody that's familiar with the area. Rob, you are absolutely right. Landlords have a real raw deal right now. And I've said this many times in the past. If you can see from the streams that I've put in the past, some of the videos I've put in the past, that landlords are being in a very, they're basically in a very abusive type of relationship with the city and with the government right now. I'm just glad to see that actually things are moving. So you have a bad situation right now for landlords because they're not getting any help. That's the truth. Up until now, the real help that they've reached and they have been given by the government is loans. And come on, this is kind of ridiculous right now. These people can't collect rent because you basically mandated they can't collect rent. And this goes on to both residential and commercial level. They can't collect rent. They can't do anything to evict the people that are haven't paying the rent. And this does not include the people that are truly affected by COVID. If they're really affected by COVID, some of the... Rob, write that again. I missed it. You want to take advantage of something? I didn't see what exactly. Yeah, if you're watching, please put that back so it could pop up on my screen. But what you're looking at right now is a situation where they can't collect rents. They're not allowed to evict people. And I'm not, like I said, I am not focusing on the people that are affected by COVID. If you're sick, if you can't work, if you're unemployed, in that kind of situation, I get it. But the government should step in and pay those people's rents since they mandated for the private landlords to not collect. It's simple as that. It's very simple. It's kind of ridiculous. But what you're looking at is a uphill battle for landlords. And I know people don't like me to use the word landlords, housing providers, but the general public knows everybody is landlords and they know everybody is tenants. We could use the words housing providers, we could use the words renters, but to make it simple for people that are just jumping into the stream and that kind of thing to be able to understand what I'm saying, it's a landlord. The landlords are being part of an extremely abusive relationship. Wanted to buy investment property. Okay, so Rob, I'm going to tell you something. In every good and bad scenario, every good and bad market, there are opportunities. And right now, at this moment in time, there's people building a portfolio, making moves that will make them very, very happy and wealthy in the future. And it's because of a lot of the misery that's being put in place. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything against anybody that's investing right now and taking advantage of the opportunities out there, because Somebody's going to. Somebody's going to take advantage. I saw 6-family homes in Astoria selling for 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, which is unheard of. Unheard of. I don't care what the rent roll is. You know, it could be a 110, 120 rent roll, whatever the case is. It's not a crazy rent roll. But compared to the multipliers that were selling previously, we're talking about serious numbers. Now, what I'm going to say, and my recommendation to you, Rob, is if you got some cash reserves and you have the ability to make a move and the numbers work, you make that move because you're going to be happy down the line. Now, don't get me wrong. Housing and being a landlord in New York is not for the people with weak stomachs. You got a lot to deal with. You got the government that's you're up against. You have a lot of different challenges. But as long as you know the laws and you go by protocol and you do everything the right way, you'll be okay. You won't have any issue. You'll be setting yourself up for the future. Now, if you got a lot of cash reserves, you can use those cash reserves to your advantage because there's a lot of multifamilies out there that are suffering, that can't sell in a conventional format, that are selling by a loan or that kind of thing because they're not collecting rents. And the banks are not giving out the loans on properties that are not bringing out the rents, or they're not giving enough of a loan to be able to justify the selling price. So you're going to have to come up with more cash reserves. But once everything does start to hit its stride again and people start to actually pay the rents again, because eventually that's going to have to happen. You know, you can't go infinitely without paying rents, even though it feels that way. It's going to have to change. You know, once that does happen, all these places are going to start self-adjusting again, and you can see the prices starting to go back to what they should be, or at least start to make their path towards that. So, you know, you always have a situation where the people that are willing to take the risk during a time where everybody is afraid to take the risk are the ones that are end up profiting. I'm a very big believer in taking the approach you go the opposite way of the herds. So you see, if you see the masses, they're all running one way and they're running for the hills and they're, you know, scared as hell, and they don't want to you know, invest, and they don't want to do the sky is falling, there's blood on the streets, that kind of thing. That's the time when you make that investment, because the market won't be any weaker than it would be at that given moment. When you feel like there's a complete apocalypse around you, that's when you make the moves. It looks like I'm going to break my live stream because I'm getting a call. I'll try to get on later. Actually, no. So I'm going through a live stream right now. So I guess I endured that. So it didn't break up. I couldn't change the cut the line. I'll have to answer that phone as soon as I get off the stream and give that person a call back. And let me show everybody what's looking like as well now. Rob, anytime, if you have any other questions, please let me know. Hopefully I helped you in some way. Hopefully I helped somebody else that might be listening either now or in a future live stream in some way. That's why I like to do these live streams of people answer me and doing a little bit of Q&A and giving you a little bit of a perspective of what, you know, my industry has taught me and what I'm dealing with on a daily level. You know, but it's one of those scenarios where it's a changing market, and the entire way of doing business in the real estate market is something that is something that needs to be looked on day-to-day level. You really do. Things are going to change dramatically over the next few years. Obviously the basics will stay that way. They're not going to change. But there's going to be a lot of nuances. There's going to be a lot of changes throughout the place. I'm actually attempting right now to get back on the highway. Let me show everybody what this looks like. This is what the LIE looks like right now. I'm attempting to get back onto LIE. I don't know if this was a mistake or not, but I started seeing it getting a little congested on the service road, but now the cars are moving again, so I think I made a mistake of jumping back on. But I'm going to try to muscle through this, maybe to get to exit 31 or 33, and hopefully I see a break and I'll be able to actually press a little bit on the gas, past 5 miles per hour. If you like these live streams and these drive-thrus from the city, going back and forth, and the Q&As that I do, please let me know. Put a comment below. Press the like button just to let me know that you appreciate what I'm doing. If you don't like what I'm doing, press the dislike button. That'll give me an indication of you hating the videos, and maybe I'll stop them. Or maybe out of just pure stubbornness, I'll keep doing them more and more, because I don't necessarily listen to everything everybody tells me. Yeah, you can see the traffic building up on the service road levels too. That's basically why I jumped off, because once you get past this point on the service road, then you have to go through that whole big bend and go through that whole Little Neck Parkway section, and sometimes it gets even more congested there. At least now I'm moving a little bit. I'm actually seeing right now to the right of me the service road, and they're moving just about at the same pace that we are, which is not necessarily great. Plus you got the lights which stop you back and forth, so it's a typical drive-through from the city to Long Island. I'm sure a lot of people have taken this drive before. I'm sure a lot of people are taking this drive now. But it goes back to what we said. Things are looking like they're coming somewhat back to normal on some levels. And traffic is definitely not the one thing that I wanted to see come back to normal. It's actually really frustrating. But what are you going to do? I figured it's my birthday today, and I'll share my birthday experience drive with the rest of the world. And while I'm doing that, if you want to ask me any questions, real estate related, or I don't know, if you want to ask me anything else, I'll try to answer those questions too, but I might not necessarily have the right answers. But when real estate comes as the topic, I usually have those right answers. Thank you very much, Rob. And I'm not saying that it's my birthday just to get people to tell me happy birthday. I just figured, why not tell everybody? A lot of people don't say that I don't really talk about my own personal stuff too much and that kind of thing, which I'm a private person, and I don't really talk too much about that. So, every here and there, I'll throw a little bit of piece of me, get everybody to understand that, I pretty much deal with the same kind of stuff everybody else deals with on a daily basis. Oh, look at that. There was an accident there. I'm just curious. That woman is standing on the side of the that was just standing on the side because of the accident. She's all by herself. There's nobody standing near her, but she still had a mask on. And this is just an observation, and maybe a stupid observation, or maybe I just like stuck in traffic and my mind is going to different places right now. Why is she wearing that mask? Is it because she feels like she can get coronavirus by the people that are driving by? Is she feeling that she could coronavirus by the person that she got an accident with that was like 20 feet away from her? Does she feel that it helps her keep away the toxicity and the smog and all the stuff coming out of the mufflers of all the cars driving her by? That's actually a really smart thing to do, because you don't want to pollute yourself with all the stuff coming out of the cars driving by. But that being said, why are people wearing masks in those situations? Is it just it's become a habit? And I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or if that's what you should or shouldn't do. It's just an observation. Rob, that's a great question, and I'll give you the answer right now. As far as government changing the policy for tenant, and I think I hope that you're referring directly for New York, because New York is a different animal in itself, and every state has different rental laws. You have the basic stuff that comes in from the government, but at the same time, certain states have harsher mandates than others, like New York City and New York State has a lot harsher mandates on landlords and the rental laws than a lot of other places. Now, will they relax the mandates and the guidelines, and will they change the laws? Down the line, they will. Things will be made adjustment, but it has to get. Thank you very much, Anthony. Let me take off my glasses. It's getting dark. The rental laws are going to have to go through a change at one point or another, but I have an awful feeling that we're going to have to go to the one extreme before things start to modify and get better. And if anybody out there is, a person that follows history and has followed how landlord-tenant laws and guidelines throughout New York City history has been, it's been through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of peaks and valleys, and a lot of people that have a lot of groups and a lot of agencies that have been committed to seeing changes on both sides. So I'm going to give you a comparison. In the 70s, rental conditions were really bad going into the 80s. It got to the point where, you had a lot of dilapidated places, a lot of the places that were falling down. And it was very much to do with the laws and the guidelines that were put originally in place through the stabilization and rent controls mandated through the city and then sometimes through the state. So they basically allowed living conditions to get to a point where they were so horrendous that they needed to take action. How did they take action? They basically gave major incentives to not only landlords, but to builders and developers to create new housing through abatements, through other kind of economic incentives in order to get more housing and better housing out there. Now, we went through a whole wave of that, and it went all the way through the early 2000s, where things were like really getting much better as far as living conditions for people. in a lot of these units. Not only in these units that were being newly built or renovated, but it also gave an incentive to landlords that had places that were falling apart and they were in real need, and to be updated and to be structurally updated. Not only in the bricks and mortars mindset, the actual electrical, the plumbing, all that stuff. And they had that opportunity through MCIs, major capital improvements. They had opportunities through rental increases, through vacancy increases that were allowed. And I'm talking about strictly through the stabilized and rent-controlled units at that point. And that was working. You had a lot of new places, better places being available out there. But what ended up happening while that was taking place was that the rental rates were skyrocketing as well. Now, it's only logical to expect somebody that's going to be spending thousands upon thousands of dollars to renovate a unit and get it up to date and make that huge investment to increase the rent to be able to subsidize that additional investment that they made. And like I said, for a while it was working. The problem was it was working too well as far as the government view was. It was making it unaffordable for a lot of people to be able to live in the city. That's why you had a lot of landlord, a lot of roommate situations, that were happening where people wanted to, get a roommate and split the cost of a unit and that kind of thing. And it worked out really well for a lot of people. But what was a bigger problem for the city were the people that were not necessarily in a position to be able to afford the units and were unemployed or were on different other social programs that were getting priced out. For example, go back 10 years, go back to 2010. Your average one-bedroom voucher from Section 8 was, if I remember correctly, I think $1,250 or $1,300, right around that range. And it was in an okay position to be able to afford a decent unit, but because the rents were going up a lot more than that, your average one bedroom in, let's say, Astoria at that point in time was already at the $1,500, $1,600 range, sometimes even $1,700 range. A lot of these people with the vouchers and with the programs were not able to afford and get into these units. So, is that the landlord's problem? No. As long as there's a person willing to rent it at that rate, then it should be within that person's right to be able to put it on the market and ask for that. But the government intervened, and they decided over years to modify the way increases took place, to modify any kind of increases you could do on any major improvements or major renovations in the spaces or the buildings themselves. And in June of 2019, you had a major change in rental law. And it was like a big bomb that dropped on the landlord community, the housing providers, which made it close to impossible to be able to get any kind of return on your investment if you decided to make major capital improvements. So what happened was, now you have apartments that really needed a gut renovation. They really did. And that landlord, under any other conditions, would be spending, upwards $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to renovate that apartment or that unit. And then through increases and through the way of destabilization, they would be able to achieve free market rent and basically set their price. Now, you're limited to how much you can actually set. You know, you can't go from a 1,500 one-bedroom unit and say all of a sudden I want $10,000 for it. It doesn't work that way, because you're not going to find a tenant or a tenant group that are going to be willing to pay that number. So you have to kind of bring it within reason, or within the climate of the economy and what is affordable and that kind of thing. But if you're putting yourself in a position where you can't make any increases and you can't get any return on your investment, you're basically going to do a lot of patch jobs, and you're basically going to just do the bare minimum to get it rented out again. And that's what's been happening since 2019. And in some cases, you're actually seeing a lot of vacancy in units deliberately. You're seeing a lot of these rent control units that all of a sudden become available, or rent stabilized units that become available, that need a significant amount of work. But because there's no ability to be able to increase the rents, like if you got a $300 a month apartment, and you can't bring it up more than like $500-600, what's the point of spending 40-50 grand in it to put somebody in at $500-600 that will never leave? That's the truth. If you had an apartment at that low rent, you will never leave, especially if it's a stabilized apartment. You have a lot of rights, and you'll be able to stay there forever if you like. You know, in some cases, you even pass it down to like your kids and that kind of thing. And basically, it's like you own it without any other liabilities. So you're having a lot of these landlords that are deliberately not putting them back on the market, and rather keep them vacant. And I understand them. That makes absolute sense. It doesn't make sense to go throw good money after bad. So you're getting more and more of that, and you will continue to get more and more of that, and you will continue to actually get more dilapidated type of buildings, more dilapidated type of units. You get more unhealthy living environments, or subpar living environments. It might be adequate city standards, as far as if it's adequate or not, or it just might just be ugly. You know, and that's a mental health issue too, as well. You know, just because you can afford a certain amount of, to rent out a place, shouldn't mean you want to live in a place that's completely horrendous. You know, or ugly. You know, it's got the 1960s purple tiles and yellow tiles and pink tiles and blue tiles and that kind of thing. But you're going to have more and more of that. There's a lot of people that seem to think that the landlord will, like those from the cancel rent movement. Well, you're right. There are a lot of people that think that will happen, but it won't happen. So basically, just to wrap up and finalize my thoughts on that, you will have a lot of, I can't believe I'm actually making way. You know, it opened up a little bit for me, I think, thankfully. Well, a lot of people want something for nothing. That's very true, Rob. But it's going to get to the point where they're going to keep taking away. They're going to keep taking away. They're going to make it impossible to be able to give a safe living type of situation for a lot of people. And it's going to reverse gears. And then what's going to happen is, at one point, you're going to have a huge amount of incentives that are going to be given out to landlords, housing providers. You're going to have a lot of incentives that are going to be given out to new development, new builders. And that's going to kickstart the new cycle again. It's going to happen. Mark my words. I don't know how many years of pain they're going to make the landlords go through. And don't get me wrong. The tenants that are doing the right thing, The good tenants, they're going to be facing the same kind of pain that a lot of landlords are, because they're going to be living in places they really don't want to live, and because there's nothing better available out there, or if there is something better available, if you're going to go into luxury type of rental unit, you're going to pay for it, and there's going to be no middle ground. There's not going to be those standard apartments where it's not, the Taj Mahal, but at the same time, it's not horrendous. You're not going to have a lot of those middle of the ground units available. So they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be living in pretty awful type of situations. And this is just going to be a grinding, ugly, slow process, which is going to put, like I said, landlords to pain. It's going to put tenants in pain. And when it gets so out of hand, then they're going to finally turn around and give incentives to get it, rehabilitated. And it's, like I said, it's going to be too late at that point for a lot of people. A lot of landlords are going to get frustrated to the point where they give up on their properties, or they get bombarded left and right with 311 calls and that kind of thing. You're going to have that. It's going to happen. But at the same time, the change will come, and at the end, the tenants are going to end up paying for it. Tired of New York great. I didn't quite read that, Rob. I hope to try to figure that out. But, Rob, by the way, thank you very much for sitting and giving me all these questions and giving me a reason to talk on the stream. I originally did this just to give an update to everybody, just on how the traffic conditions are and how things are kind of settling and leveling off here as far as normalcy in New York City and our traffic patterns. But you actually gave me somebody to talk to, kind of, through this stream, and keep myself mentally sane and preoccupied as far as talking about things, instead of just brooding in my own anger of being stuck in traffic. Although, like I said, it did clear up significantly, and I'm very happy to see it clear up. So it's not quite as bad as it was, but it is bad. I'm going to sign off now because I'm actually getting close to my destination. But thanks for joining me, and thanks for listening to the live stream. And if anybody's listening to the replay on it, make sure you put a like, share, comment, etc., etc. And again, I'll see you soon. Make a lot of money in real estate. Thanks.